I've always been a good speller. Some people just have the knack, while others struggle with their whole lives to spell, even the most rudimentary words. With the advent of the internet came widespread empathy towards proper spelling. I'd soon just join the masses, but I'm sure I've forgive myself. Not after everything that's happened. Allow me to explain. In 6th grade, there was a spelling bee at my elementary school. Long story short, I won. It wasn't fair, really, considering the 4th and 5th graders were involved, but I didn't let that empathy sour the moment. My classmates were thrilled and offered their sincerest congratulations. Up until that point, I hadn't been very much of a standout kid, but now I was a champion of sorts. It was a moment long to relieve. As the winner, I was invited to compete against local schools, then possibly advance in the regionals. Exciting as it was, I couldn't help but worrying myself, since I tend to freeze up who put it when upon the spot. The first spelling bee was a problem. It was at my own school, which was small, with only some other students and teachers there. But now I would have to stand up in front of people I didn't know and try to keep my cool. My first challenge was at the much larger school. I was relieved to find that, despite the competition taking place at a sizable auditorium, it would have the small audience of just parents and a few teachers. No bratty kids to heckle me. Being on stage was a little disconcerting, but having been forced to perform in a school play, it wasn't entirely unfamiliar territory. The other kids didn't look too bright, and I figured they came from schools where nobody could spell for shit. This was going to be easy. Before we begin, the usual rules dedicated by the pronouncer. I won't bore you with the specifics, but she said to make up a point to emphasize what there will be no homophones, word sounds, but the same that are spelled used differently. Usually, when given a homophone, the competitor would simply ask for a definition. However, this particular spelling bee, I was to expect no homophones at all. Not one. I could push them to a completely out of my mind. Homophone? What's a homophone? Things got a little off to a good start. As expected, naturally, the words started out as simple, gradually words become more complex. Not enough to stump me, though. I was right around the other students being pathetic spellers. 2 of them were eliminated early by some basic words. My confidence was skyrocketing, and effortless victory seemed to be within my grasp. But then out of nowhere, this bitch did the unthinkable. She gave me a fucking homophone. Now you're probably thinking, whoa, that's harsh considering that you just asked for the definition. Well, you're right. I could have asked for a definition. Oh God, why didn't I ask for the definition? My 11-year-old mind struggled to understand why someone would be so instant and completely contracted themselves. She said there would be no homophones. No fucking homophones. I felt like I'd been thrown under the bus. You could hear a pin drop and a wolf howl in the distance, as I stood there like an idiot, trying to untie the knots of this woman had just fastened in my brain. The words either colonel or colonel. I could never figure out which. I was too preoccupied with the whirlwind of questions orbiting around my head. Which word am I supposed to spell? Why didn't she just give me this word? Why did she say there'd be no homophones? Why is she doing this to me? I wanted to scream, to run, to cry, but I did nothing. After a painfully awkward and seemingly endless silence, I was told to hurry or I'd be out of time. Afraid of being disqualified, I spit out the only thing tangled my mind could scramble together. A combination of both spellings. CERNOL. I'm sorry, that isn't correct. I was mortified. What the hell just happened? Did I really spell it that way? Why did I do that? Why did I do that? No, it was that bitch's fault. She lied to me. This was my chance to show everyone that I was special, and she just ripped it away like a greedy troll, snatching bread from a hungry child. I wanted to protest, but I couldn't make a sound. Paralyzed by denial, confusion, and embarrassment, they had to play me off, so speak, like some dazed fool. I was clearly distraught, but no one seemed to understand how my severity. My father attempted to console me, but he didn't try that hard. I supposed it was futile, or maybe he was just that bad type of thing. I pleaded that stupid woman, but of course she dismissed it as no big deal. I kept telling my dad. She said there'd be no homophones. I wanted to confront her, to do something about it, but instead he just shrugged it off. She knew what she did, though, and that bitch knew it. Everyone at school was sympathetic about my loss, which only made me feel worse. Now and then I imagine that dumbass kid who won the spelling bee smiling with his shit-eating grin as an evil woman pats him on the shoulder. It was obvious that I was a better speller. How in God's name did they even let that moron win? At least they were different from schools, but I never have to see them again. Still, my anger didn't fade, premeditating into the very faucet of my young life. I stopped caring about my grades and started acting out in class. The teachers were surprised, and my parents were worried. Maybe it's unfair to blame everything that happened in one experience, but the humiliation I fostered kept growing and mutating as I refused to let go. By the time I entered high school, I just didn't care anymore. It was a slippery slope. Once you give up on life, it's unusual for people to start going downhill in their teens. Bad grades, bad relationships, bad choices. That was the road I traveled into the 20s. Roads like that don't lead places worth going. I'm in my 30s now, and things are worse than ever. I can't keep a job, I'm undateable, and I piss off everyone I come into contact with. Not too long ago, something happened that I thought would change everything. It was easy to convince myself to give in the anger that had been bottling up for all those years. I didn't even know what I'd been waiting for until it fell right into my lap. I was on the line of the supermarket when I heard a voice. There was something familiar in that tone and the way she hallucinated. I glanced over as she reached for the package of frozen corn from her shopping cart. A small tear in the bag caught my eye on the head of the spray bottle, and corn started to freak out. "Oh, darn," she said. "Kernels everywhere." My eyes caught my fire. The way she said Colonel, it just had to be her. She kept singing it over and over, as if she were mocking me, laughing and joking with the cashier about a colonel here and a colonel there. I apparently thought she was funny. Something inside of me snapped, and all I could think about was how to wipe that stupid grin off of her face. I don't remember thinking what I was doing. It just kind of happened. One moment I was in the parking lot, and the next I was following her home. I had to know where she lived. As she pulled into the driveway, I made the note of the house number, and she continued on, walking straight ahead. I repeated her address over and over to myself, spelling out the street name each time. Every day when I drove around that neighborhood, passing by her house several times. It started as a hobby, and then it grew into an obsession. Sometimes at night I would sit in my car and watch her family throughout the windows. No one seemed to notice me. Her smiles and laughter were servant to fervor, collective, and inescapable hatred I felt. I'd mumble as if she were listening, utilizing every manner of profanity to express my disgust. Eventually I found that out. I had memorized her work schedule, and her husband's as well. It was only the matter of time before I confronted her alone. It was freezing that day. Most people were keeping warm inside, but I still wore a ski mask so no one would be able to identify me. The gloves, of course. I parked my car a few streets over and walked casually over to her house. I'm not sure what possessed me to go in on a broad daylight, but I knew her husband would be at work, so I took my chances. In a bold move, I went straight up to the front door, knocking impatiently. Soon I heard footsteps and a woman call, "Just a minute!" as a rain of rivers of adrenaline surged through my veins. The door swung open, and I came face to face with my sworn enemy. "Can I help?" Before she could finish, I punched her in the throat and shoved a rag in her mouth. Then I rammed that bitch with my shoulder, sending her backward and giving me the room to close and lock the door. She tried for the rag, but I hit her in the stomach. I got behind her and wrapped my arm around her neck, then dragged her into the kitchen as she floundered and flailed. Red-faced and wild-eyed, I smashed her head into the counter and threw her to the ground, planting one foot firmly on her throat. She tried her darndest to remove it, but she wasn't strong enough. Knives everywhere. I had to find the biggest one. I needed to terrify her, to make her beg for her life. It just seemed her arms were getting tired, so I lifted my foot and proceeded to kick her in the head repeatedly. She tried to get away, but I kicked her in the ribs. I just kept kicking and kicking. The rag was coming loose, so I took a break and jammed it back in her mouth. Then I sat there on the floor to watch her struggle for a moment. There was something beautiful and innocent about it. I wonder why my face hurt. I was smiling too hard. The petrified woman was now incapacitated from the pain and exhaustion. I climbed on top of her and waved the knife around in the childish manner. Close to her face, my body was shaking, and so was hers. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. I felt like a god, and judgment was at hand. What I did was still troubles me. "You poor thing," I teased. "You're looking rather pale. Do you need some air?" My enemy tried to respond, but her voice was muffled and crowded by my coughs and gurgles. You sound like a little hoarse." She bellowed for the pain. "My dear lady, is that a way to treat a guest? You can moan and groan, but you're blue in the face. I have won the control here." Her eyes revealed a sense of defeat. "Not much of a fighter." "That's right. Know the reason why it's so be intense, Wheels. I got through this together, okay?" She reluctantly nodded. "I'm going to remove the rag. Would you be so kind as not make a sound?" I pulled the rag slowly from her mouth while I grinned and gazed into her frightened eyes. She seemed relieved to breathe freely. I waited for her to settle down, then pointed the knife below her chin and began the monologue. "I bet you think I am some sort of serial killer. Sorry to disappoint you, I'm just a regular guy. A guy who just missed his chances at greatness. Since then I've been searching for the peace of mind, but I can't seem to find it. As the days to go by, it gets harder and harder. Nobody knows how to pay much in. I can't bear it any longer. I can't live anymore. I just wait for death." The woman was silent. "Does my tale amuse you?" She looked at her head slightly. I wasn't sure what to do with her. "I'm starting to get bored." "How about you?" She said nothing. Then I had a brilliant idea. "How about we play a little game? I'll give you a word and you'll spell for it. If you get it right, then you can go free. If you get it wrong, then you die." I could tell she wasn't happy about the game. "You can do that for me?" She nodded lightly. Good. I acted like I was searching for the perfect word, but I already knew what it was. I just wanted to savor the moment to breathe in fear and soak in red temptation. I smiled again, trying not to laugh. Briefly, I questioned my actions. Was I really going to kill her? Was this really the same woman that ruined my life? I didn't care. All that mattered was the moment, so I delivered the challenge. "Your word is Colonel." Or did I say Colonel? Honestly, I didn't even remember. Our unblinking eyes were locked in battle as I waited patiently for her response. The woman took a hard gulp and a deep breath, and then she spoke. "K-E... No, you have to say the word, then spell it. And then you say it again. Don't you remember how a spelling bee works?" I was furious as she got in the rules. I let us both calm down and she made another attempt. "Colonel. E... Wait, which spelling?" I burst into hysterical laughter. Which spelling, indeed? I was so proud of myself. The tables had turned. I had to put this bitch in the same position she put me for all those years ago. The only thing left to do was to watch her squirm with the blade to her face, and I leaned in and whispered, "I'm not telling." But that's not fair. Not fair? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You dare lecture me about fairness? Everything came to a head, and I could no longer cage the beast. The knife seemed to move on its own, slicing her from the left eye down to her right cheek, and the woman shrieked in pain and grabbed the wound. There was so much blood. Maybe I cut her more than once, but everything was a blur. I'm still not sure if she's alive or dead. In panic, I got spooked and I ran. I never stopped running. In another state, another name, another life. No one really knew the back of me there anyway. It's easier to disappear than you may think. I guess at the end I'm just a coward. All those years of letting myself get away with it was like somebody else's fault. Part of the regrets of what I did, but in a way it was necessary. I know that I'm still the kid who lost his spelling bee. I couldn't let myself be anyone else. Perhaps I never will. I wish the story ended there, but I overheard this woman the other day with a haunting, familiar voice. She was going on about how Kentucky Fried Chicken keeps hiring different actors to play the mascot, Colonel Sanders. Long story short, I followed her home. What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, please stay pretty.